Have you been struggling with creating or maintaining a personal budget? I can personally attest to the fact that budgets are not my forte, and I'm a numbers person. So I can only imagine how non-numbers people are coping, especially with inflation and the rising costs of seemingly everything. And that is why today we are going to let AI do the heavy lifting for us by creating a completely personalized monthly budget just for you. This is Rich Girl's Guide, where we demystify the world of personal finance to help you create a financially successful and fulfilling life. I'm your host, Kirby, and I worked in wealth management for over 6 years before leaving the office to focus on my business and my family. First things first, we will need to figure out how much money we bring home every single month. Now, we want to make sure this is an after-tax figure. So for those of you who receive a paycheck from an employer that already has taxes and insurance and all that fun stuff taken out, this step will be pretty easy. As long as you normally don't have a big tax bill in April, meaning you have appropriately withheld taxes throughout the year, you can just double your biweekly paycheck as long as you get paid twice a month. For those of you who get paid every 2 weeks, you will need to multiply your normal paycheck by 26 and then divide by 12 to get your average monthly pay. Now, I also want you to include any income you receive from side hustles such as babysitting or dog walking, because we want to get an accurate depiction of how much money you are bringing in month over month. Now that you have that monthly income amount, we can start to look at our monthly expenses. Really quick before I get too into the weeds, if you are just starting out on your budgeting journey, maybe you just graduated from college and got your first real job, or you were at a point in your life where you're starting over from scratch, you may want to start by just listing your income and asking ChatGPT to build you a budget. You can type in something along the lines of, I am a 22-year-old recent college graduate who just started their first job earning a $50,000 salary. I would like to save for retirement, rent an apartment with roommates, and still have fun on the weekends. Can you build me a personalized budget? Obviously, you will need to swap in your own details, but that will at least give you a great jumping off point if you're trying to figure out the basics, like how much rent you could afford and how much you should be spending on groceries. Okay, back to our expenses. Let's go ahead and jump over to ChatGPT or whatever AI software you want to utilize and have them give us ideas for what our fixed and variable expenses might be. Fixed expenses are the things that you have to pay the same for every single month. Think of them almost like subscriptions. You know the exact dollar amount that will be charged and on what day the bill is due. For me, my fixed expenses include mortgage and homeowners association fees, car payment and insurance, phone bill, Wi-Fi, life insurance, and then our subscriptions to things like Spotify, Disney Plus, and Hulu. Now, I'm also going to include my retirement savings because I have that taken out of our checking account every month on the same day. Now, if you have retirement savings that are separate from your paycheck, meaning it's taken out of the income that gets deposited into your bank account, you will also want to include that in your expenses. I categorize mine as fixed because I have the same exact dollar amount taken out every month. If you tend to contribute sporadically throughout the year, then you may want to categorize it as a variable expense, which I'll explain in more detail in a second. You will also want to include any other investment savings that you do periodically. This could be for your kids' college savings, your investment accounts, your emergency fund, and basically any other savings that you are consistently contributing to. All right, so the other kind of expense that you can have is called a variable expense, and it means kind of exactly what it sounds like. The dollar amount and the frequency will vary month to month. This includes things like groceries, eating out, your electric bill, entertainment, gas, hair appointments, etc. You may have a ballpark idea for some of these expenses, but you never know exactly how much you're going to spend and on what day the expense will fall. So for these categories, I would highly recommend going through your bank statements and credit card statements to get an idea of the average amount you spend in each category. Now, if you are like me and you use a credit card for most purchases, then this will actually be pretty easy. Most credit card companies will actually give you an annual breakdown of how much you spent in different categories in the last year. Instead of going through each category by hand to figure out your monthly breakdown, we are just going to copy and paste those categories and dollar amounts straight into ChatGPT. All right, guys, real quick, if you would like your very own monthly budget template, I have a free monthly template that you can use in the description. You can mark it up on your computer or you can print it out and write by hand the old school way, which is definitely my suggestion for the first few months while you are getting used to a new budget. If you do get the free template, please drop a comment below and let me know how you like it. Okay, let's get back to the show. All right, those of you that have been here for a while, you know I am an open book, but for this episode, I am not showing you our credit card bill. We're just not getting into that today. Now, I will go ahead and type in some generic figures here so that you can see an example. And of course, this is a budgeting episode, so I'm going to make an educated guess that you would like to start spending less in some of these categories. So after you copy and paste these expenses into ChatGPT, make sure you include all of your fixed expenses that are not already included. Things like rent or mortgage are probably paid out of your checking account, your retirement savings, any of those things that would be outside of your credit card. Definitely take the time to double check this list to make sure expenses aren't being counted twice and expenses aren't being missed, because both of those will throw off your entire budget. Once you have all of your expenses listed, you will also want to include your annual income amount that we calculated in the beginning of this episode. And now we are going to ask ChatGPT to give us a personalized budget. So the first time I did this with an example budget, ChatGPT was able to give me the shortfall of my budget, and it actually gave me some suggestions on categories to cut back on in order to meet my budget. Now, the second time I went to do this, it did not go as far to say where I should be cutting back in order to actually meet my budget. So if you are not seeing any actionable steps, I would simply reply back to her. Yes, I just called it her. Let's move past that and see what the next step should be. Okay, so for this example budget, I have a monthly shortfall of $800, meaning I'm spending $800 more than I am bringing in every month. I asked ChatGPT to give me suggestions on where to cut back, and although the suggestions seem a little general, two of them definitely stuck out to me. The first is the transportation suggestion. In this example budget, I have a car payment that is 20% of my monthly income, which is insanely high. ChatGPT suggested looking into refinancing my car loan to see if I can lower the monthly payment, which would be a huge help to the overall budget. Another thing I was kind of testing was the amount I was putting into savings. I said that I was saving 10% of my take-home income, which under normal circumstances would be great. However, if you are not meeting your budget, then your savings really need to be put on the back burner in order to avoid accumulating debt. Yes, I know that might seem counterintuitive, and you should absolutely be striving to start saving again as soon as possible. But when you find yourself outspending your income, you have to get that budget in check first. Think of it as putting on your oxygen mask before helping the person next to you. If you are saving a lot of money, but also racking up a ton of debt in order to do so, how much are you really helping yourself in the long run? The last thing I want to touch on in my example budget is the rent. I put an outrageous rent amount. Based on the income, it was 40% of the take-home income goes straight to rent. Now, I know that depending on where you live and just the proximity to your job, you may not have a lot of options in terms of finding more affordable housing. In this case, ChatGPT did recommend the following. Negotiate with your landlord for a lower rent or consider moving to a more affordable place when your lease is up for renewal. Not very helpful in my opinion. So let me dive a little bit deeper here. I am going to ask ChatGPT whether or not my rent is too high compared to my income, and if it is, what my options are for finding cheaper rent. Okay, now we are actually getting somewhere. ChatGPT explains that most financial advisors do not recommend spending more than 30% of your income on rent rent or mortgage, and then breaks down the math to show me that my rent is 40% of my income, which is awesome. That's great information to have. There is a whole bullet point list with suggestions and things to think about, and the first one really stood out to me. Evaluate your budget holistically. While 40% is higher than the ideal guideline, it's important to consider your entire budget picture. If you can comfortably manage your other expenses and still save, then your current rent might be manageable. Well, we can obviously see that our budget is not being met. We are spending $800 more than we make a month. So hopefully this would light a bit of a fire under someone's butt to make some financial changes. Here's the thing with rent and your budget in general. You are going to need to make sacrifices in one category or another. Let's continue using this same example. We need to cut back our budget by $800, and our rent is 40% of our income. If you feel as though you are in a great living situation, maybe your location is stellar and you can walk to all of your favorite coffee shops. Maybe your neighborhood is really safe for your kids, or you feel as though you won't be able to find a better value in your area, then there is absolutely nothing wrong with keeping your place and continuing to pay 40% of your income in rent. But you will have to sacrifice in other areas to do so. Maybe that means eating out a couple less times per week, giving up a few subscriptions, selling your car and buying something cheaper. Really go through your budget with a discerning eye and figure out what categories matter to you the most and which ones can be cut down or let go of completely. All right, let's ask ChatGPT if she has any suggestions. Okay, so she basically just gave me the exact same spiel as before. And while they are solid suggestions, it's not telling me to spend $200 less on groceries or get my phone bill down to $50 or anything really tangible like that. So while ChatGPT can help with calculations and generating ideas, the nitty-gritty of fleshing out a budget that aligns with your goals and your unique expenses is really going to fall on you. Hopefully over time, AI will just continue to get better and better, and we can continue to lean on it more, especially when it comes to budgeting and finance. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Are you going to use ChatGPT to make your own monthly budget? Are you going to download my monthly budget template? Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I will have a brand new episode out on Monday, but until then, have a wonderful week. Later, rich girls.